Hi Flosstube! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess, my pronouns are she and her, and today I'm here with something a little bit different. So instead of showing you like cross-stitching progress, I am here with a bit of a tutorial. So when I've shown FFOs in the past, there have been a number of times where I've shown a hoop back like this, like a spiral. And I've been asked so many times how to do it. I've been asked for tutorials a number of times, so I figured it's FFO February, it is time that I got round to doing this. So I am actually future Jess. We're going to go back to past Jess in a minute to see this specific piece being FFO'd. As you can see, this one's a spiral with some variegated thread. I quite like, it's fun using the variegated thread basically. I have some other examples to show you, but first we have a second FFO type that I'm going to show you, and it's based on the first, and it is a little ornament finish. So I'm going to first show you how to do the spiral, and then I'm going to show you how to turn a piece that's been spiraled into a fully backed ornament with a little ribbon hanger, so that no one can see your backs. You can gift these, no one will ever see your backs, so we don't have to worry about being part of the messy back club. So I will be going through first the hoop and the spiral, and then how I would turn that into an ornament. So before I jump over to a top-down view and start showing you that, I just wanted to show you some examples, because there is some variation in how you can do these spiral backs. So as you've seen, both of these have the variegated pearl cotton. So this is just a DMC pearl cotton. I literally bought this because I thought it was pretty and I thought it would be good for doing these backs. I now almost always use pearl cotton, but you don't have to. I mean, as an example, I also have some cream pearl cotton here. And to be honest, you can use any size. This one's a size 12. I think this is a size 8, but I've lost the tag. I think maybe a size 5 would be too chunky, so 12 and 8 would be my recommendations. But you don't have to use pearl cotton. So this one is a good example. In fact, both of them are great examples where I've literally just used leftover thread, I think from the same kit even. I did long before Flosstube, or before I knew about the Stitchy community, I did a big rainbow horse kit from, can't remember the designer. It's like quite a well-known kit company. I'll pop it at the bottom if I can find the info. But at the end it meant I had loads of rainbow threads left over, and I don't think they had DMC numbers. And even if they did, I probably wouldn't have known what to do with them at the time. So I just used them on these. So this one is 3 different shades of blue. I've just used, like, say the dark thread first, and then when I've run out of that, I've swapped and used a lighter shade of blue, and then when I've run out of that, I've used this sort of, I'm not sure if that's, yeah, it's a very light blue, but it creates a cool sort of colour spiral as well. And then exactly the same for this one, I've just used 3 shades, so that sort of dark plum colour, and then the orange, and then dark yellow, light orange, and again it just gives a cool rainbow spiral effect. I think for these, at this point, this one's done with 2 strands of that DMC, this one's done with 3. I don't think I have any of them here. This one's done with 2 different shades of DMC, like I've got 1 strand of yellow and 1 strand of white in there. Clearly I had leftovers I wanted to use up. I have at times also, and I do this for lacing, for framing as well, I did get given like a bundle of like cheap craft store brand threads, and for a while I was working through using those for lacing as well. So you've got lots of options, basically any thread. You want it to be quite strong, so I'd probably say 3 strands of DMC or more, maybe 6 strands if it's like an off-brand and you don't think it's as strong, because these are quite tight. You want to be able to pull on them and not have your thread snap. The other thing that I wanted to show you about the back of these, let me find, I know I specifically went looking through my hoop wall to find an example, and I now can't remember which one I was going to use. This one. Okay, so these are the same size hoop, but as you can see, the spirals look a little bit different. So this one on the left, the way I've done this is picking 3 points as my starting shape, so like a triangle, and then you just keep going around. You'll see more of that in the tutorial in a second. But yeah, so 3 points means you get this kind of smaller circle in the middle. For this one, I've picked 4, so I've almost started with a square rather than a triangle, and it means you get a more open circle in the middle. Now, this is kind of just a personal preference when it's on this size of hoop. When you get to the diddy ones, I would recommend more points, so use a square rather than a triangle, just because it gives you more space in the middle to get your needle in and out. But again, I will talk a bit more about that when we get the actual recording of the top-down tutorial. So yeah, those are some examples. I've lost track of what I'm putting where. So I'm going to jump over now to a top-down view, and as I said, we're going to go through this one first to show you the spiral back in general, and then I'm going to show you how to take a spiral hoop and turn it into an ornament with a hanger and a felt back. So over to top down Jess for the tutorial. Okay, so we are back, and first I'm going to show you just how I would do a regular hoop finish. So I have a hoop wall next to my home office desk, and this one will be joining them. So first things first, on my hoop I'm going to grab a pen and I'm just going to make a little mark across both hoops. So the reason to do this is basically the hoops aren't perfectly circular, and if you take them out and say rotate one of them, rotate the middle hoop, when you put them back together they might not fit as well and you end up with gaps, and it makes it a little bit harder to get some nice tension on your project. So by marking them, and this will be on the back, so don't worry, it's not going to be seen, when you put the project, sorry if you can hear Alfie sniffing and rustling around, just scattered some treats for him to find and he has found them all and is still aggressively sniffing everywhere. So yeah, that mark won't be seen because it'll be on the back, but it means that when I put my fabric in I could just make sure that I get the best possible tension across the fabric. So this one has like a little, the bolt isn't attached to the hoop, so just going to loosen that one and pop them apart. And then, as you would for any normal putting something in a hoop, I'm going to pop that behind and try and sort of get it roughly aligned where I want. Looks about right. And then pop my hoop outer over the top. Now obviously at this point it's still adjustable, so like take your time, get it how you want. I usually, so if we flip it over I can see that those marks aren't quite aligned, so I'm just gonna scooch this one around a bit. I can see my mark on the inner hoop there and my outer hoop here, they're close enough. So I'm gonna tighten the hoop a little bit just so that any tensioning I do kind of holds, and then just pull on opposite sides of the fabric. I normally do the top and the bottom, and then just sort of tweak the sides. Ideally when you're doing this, especially with things like linen and even weave, the weave of the fabric goes this way and this way. You want to be pulling like that, so you want to almost pull from these sides against each other and then pull from the top and bottom against each other. What I wouldn't really recommend is pulling diagonally, because you'll warp the fabric and you'll warp your stitching. So if you want this bit to be tighter, you want to pull from both sides together, not necessarily from directly opposite. So that looks pretty central. I'm pretty happy with it. A little tightening that way. So I'm going to tighten this a little bit more. I'm just doing this with my fingers. I would recommend, and I usually will when it's, I'd either get one out now or do it at the end, but there's usually a little screwdriver space So for this one, because the bolt isn't attached, I'd get out some pliers as well to just hold the nut. But I think I've got that fairly tight. Just give it a last little. To be fair, the way that we're gonna lace this on the back will help keep the tension as well. So the hoop isn't the only thing that's going to be helping us keep this nice and tight. Okay, so that is our stitching in the hoop. Apologies if I'm a little bit off frame. I'm not used to having to look in the camera to check where I'm at. So what we're going to do now is flip it over, and I'm just going to use a pair of fabric scissors, and I'm going to leave maybe maybe an inch, like 2 to 3 centimeters around the outside edge. This doesn't need to be precise. It's, oh God, bad coordination and blocking the camera there. Yeah, this is all going to get covered up or tucked away in the back, so this doesn't need to be precise at all. I wouldn't go much more than an inch. And the smaller the hoop that you're doing, the less you can really afford to leave, just because all of this will fold into the middle. So on this one, this can all fold into the middle and you'll still have quite a big gap in the middle to sort of do the spiral, which you'll see in a second. Obviously on a much smaller hoop, that much covers up. If you think about it, that only leaves you quite a small gap in the middle to work with. So about an inch all the way around would be my recommendation. If you're working with a fabric that frays a lot, I would consider doing this step and then possibly take it out of the hoop and serge your edges or zigzag stitch them on a sewing machine, just to keep those edges nice and secure so that you don't get too much fraying. So next step, for this one I'm going to use a nice colourful pearl cotton, just so it's nice and easy for you guys to see. For a lot of these, like, it depends on the fabric really. If something is kind of see-through, I'll try and use a similar colour thread, just so that if it does show through, it's not like you've got neon orange showing through like a really pale linen or anything. I quite like the fun variegated threads, so that's what we're going with. And as I said in the intro, you can honestly use almost any thread for this. I've used a leftover DMC from kits. I've used pearl cotton, I've used a bundle of sort of cheap off-brand threads. That needle is way too small. Sorry if there's any wriggling while I grab needles off my my Lowry, which is what the camera is currently held in. So I've got quite a long length of thread, and what I tend to do is thread my needle and put it almost halfway along so that my tails are a little bit offset. You can see them there. So I've got like a section that I'm almost working with, and then I've got the tail and I can just move the needle along the thread. It just means that I'm not having to pull like really long thread through as we go. So at this point we're going to come back to this little mark that we made on the hoop, and I'm going to make 2 more. So I basically want to make like can I do this? Like an equilateral triangle shape with my 3 marks. Okay, so my first one's here, and I'm going to trust my hands and put another one there, and a third one about here. Now these don't need to be precise. You can make them precise if you wish. If you get a fabric tape measure, you can measure all the way around, divide that length by 3, and obviously mark them more precisely. I'm a firm believer that most of the time people aren't going to see the back, so that level of precision doesn't really matter. I'd also say, again, if you're doing a smaller hoop, it may be worth doing like a square instead. Hands don't want to do that. But yeah, if you do a square instead, as I showed you at the start, it will make for a more open spiral in the middle, which just makes it a little bit easier. It gives you a bit more space in the middle to be pulling your needle up through the gap. But for this size hoop, I think 3 is absolutely fine. So to start with then, I'm going to pick one of these marks, and it really doesn't matter which. And I'm going to just start by securing my thread. So I'm going to do that by coming from the middle to the outside, because I want this tail to be tucked underneath. And I'm just going to do like 3 or 4 little stitches kind of in the same spot. Try and go through the thread of the previous stitch if I can. Honestly, however you want to secure your thread. The only thing I would be hesitant to do on this is a knot, especially if you're using like an even weave or linen, but to be honest, Ada as well. Yeah, there is going to be tension on this thread, and you just don't want that knot to pop through. So we've got our little knotty, it's not a knot, our little securing stitch there, and we've got both the tail and our working thread coming through the bottom. And all we're going to do is, I'm trying to decide, like I would normally go clockwise, but I think actually for showing you anti-clockwise might be easier because I'm not reaching over so much. So bear with me while I do this not how I would normally. So all we're going to do is pull that thread nice and tight across to the next mark, and we're just going to go down next to the mark and pull the thread through to the middle. Like so. Okay, and that will pull those 2 points together. Don't worry about the fact that this is flapping up at the moment. We will get to that in a second. So I'm then going to rotate. I find it easiest to rotate the hoop as I go, so that I'm always kind of doing the stitch in the same place. Again, we're going to pull the thread across to the next mark, come in a little bit so that we're not interfering with the inner hoop, and just go down and pull through to the middle again. And you can already see that triangle starting to form. So what we're going to do now, instead of going exactly to our starting point, we're going to go a little bit past it. So how much you go past is kind of a personal preference, and like you'll learn as you do a couple of these how much you prefer, like whether you want it to be, if you do closer to the previous stitch, you'll use a lot more thread. You'll have a denser spiral. I'm not sure if I can... yeah. So you can see here my... oh, no, in front of the camera, Jess. The stitches are quite close together, maybe like 1/2 centimetre each time. And there is a lot of thread here. It's quite a dense spiral. On the flip side, this one, I've gone a bit further apart. So these are maybe 2 centimetres apart in places, like 1 to 2 centimetres, and there's just less thread involved, and it's a bit more of an open spiral. Both are functionally fine. I think when you have more threads, there's more to hold down your fabric, I guess, whereas here you can see there are bits where the fabric kind of pops up. I don't know how well you can see that actually on black fabric. Do I have another one that's a good example? Not really. Yeah, here we go. So you can see here you get sometimes bits of fabric popping up between the threads, and you can poke them back down. Absolutely no worries, you sort of poke it underneath. But the wider apart your threads are, the more your fabric is going to pop up in between, the more you're going to have to sort of manipulate it to tuck it back under. So I think possibly these are some of my earlier ones, so the wider spacing I don't enjoy as much. I do now tend to do a slightly tighter spiral, just because I find doing this quite therapeutic as well. So I just put a knot in my thread. No, okay. So where are we at? So yeah, I've done maybe about 1 centimetre past, and you basically just carry that on. So I'm then going to follow my triangle round and go again 1 centimetre past my previous stitch. And when you come under, you want to come under all of the threads in the middle. So you always want your needle to go under everything and come back up in the middle. Just move my needle along the thread a little bit, turn it, and again find your next mark, follow the triangle round and go about 1 centimetre past. Now again, these like spacings don't need to be precise, you can adjust as you go. The goal, I guess, is to have these gaps get smaller but at a fairly equal rate, because that way you have the same number of stitches going all the way around. It's nice and neat. If you find, I'll come back to this in a second when I get closer to that point, but if you find that they're not even gaps, you can just space out your stitches in one section and make them closer together in another. It doesn't need to be precise at all. I mean, again, if you really, really want it to be super, super precise, when you measure out your hoop at the start, to mark your 3 marks, you could just mark every centimetre all the way around your outside hoop. And just, yeah, perfectly evenly space everything. But again, for me, I do this because I enjoy it and because it keeps everything nice and secure, not necessarily because people are going to see it. So just carry on working round. Every now and then I like to hold the hoop and give this a nice good tug to pull everything tight. You may find when you do that you can see like where the thread goes through the fabric that it's pulling a little bit of a hole. Again, doesn't really matter, it just means it's being held nice and tight. No one's going to see it. So we've come to the end of the length of thread that I'd cut, so I'm just going to pop my needle. Where am I going to put my needle? I'm going to pop it there, because if I put it on my stand it's going to jiggle the camera. And we're just going to pull another length of thread. Again, I do my full wingspan, hand to hand, fully outstretched. And all we're going to do here is knot it on. Now, I'm going to be honest here, I am terrible at knotting. I know there is a correct way and an incorrect way. One is a slip knot, which will just pull undone, and the other one is not, and I can never remember which, so I just tie knot, try it. If it doesn't work, try it again. I probably should just learn the correct way. But this is just like a basic left over, right and under, and then same again, like a double knot. That is, it's holding pretty good. It's not going anywhere. Cool. So now that is secured, I'm going to find the other end of the thread and thread that one. And again, pull it about halfway. Now, I typically will leave these taily bits until the very end and then just snip them all off at once. One thing to note is try to make sure that your knot is far enough away from your next stitch that your knot's not gonna like mess with your tension. So I actually could have just about done another stitch, but then I wouldn't have had enough tail to knot with. So I've come back kind of halfway between the 2 stitchy points to put that knot, even though it means a little bit of thread wastage. You can pull a knot through when you're lacing, but it's unnecessary hassle in my opinion. And we just keep going, and again I can pull that quite tightly. The knot isn't going anywhere. I was lucky this time I got it right first time. It can be a little bit like tangly with long lengths of thread. If you find that's a real problem, just use shorter lengths. You'll just need to knot more often. I'm lazy and I don't like rethreading my needle, so I go for the long starting threads. Okay, so as I said before, you want to make sure that you're always going under, so it's easy at this point to want to come out through this gap. Make sure you're always going under the previous threads and coming up in the middle. It's not the end of the world, but because we're crossing over here, it just keeps the threads sort of laying nicely together. If I come up in this gap, we're going over rather than under, but it means that this thread is a bit loose, whereas by going under, the previous threads sort of hold it down, as it were. all the threads hold all the other threads down and you get a nice neat spiral. So we're just going to carry on. I think I'm going to need a third length of thread by the looks of it. By doing it this way as well, you go under this, oh, I'm sliding off camera, sorry. You go under this bundle of threads, but then you go over this next one. So again, it sort of interweaves all of the strands. They all sort of hold each other nicely. I think my my rotating is continuously pushing me out of shot. Okay, we're going to need another length. For a second. I think we should be able to do it with one more. I might make it an extra long one though. Bonus length. Because I'm a glutton for punishment and I'm a sucker for dealing with tangled threads. So again, just tying a basic double knot and hoping that I get it the right way around and don't make a slip knot. No, that one was a slip knot. Okay, try again, Jess. You'd think that I'd just, you know, look it up and learn it, but no, we trial and error this every single time because I'm too impatient to go and officially look something up. No, sometimes if I'm being really lazy, I'll just do a triple knot and that way it can't slip. That one's definitely not going to stay. Let's do a like triple or quadruple knot. I guess this is proof that even people who put tutorials online don't always know what they're doing. We're all just making it up. There we go, that's not going anywhere. We got there in the end. This is an absurdly long piece of thread. Okay. It will hopefully see us all the way to the end. So, okay, so we came from here, so we're coming across. And you just carry on. Just keep rotating. Well, that's very long. And again, you can see here it's now caught the thread on a hoop off to the side. That's not helpful. So it's now, once I've put my thread and my needle down, it's actually a bit of a reach to get to the middle. I'm having to sort of reach under the bundle of threads. This is the kind of situation where having a 4-pointed one helps because your circle is wider, so you've got less of a distance from where you're stitching to the middle of the circle. But again, I've done this so many times that I don't mind the slight faff of having to reach under. Oops. Okay, so we're getting quite close to the end now. So this is the kind of point where I'd look at how much space is left between each of my sort of sections of stitching. In this case, they're actually quite even. I think this one is slightly bigger, so I might just space my stitches out in that area a tiny bit more. So do them like a little bit over a centimetre apart. If you've got quite big differences, like keep an eye on it and try and notice it early and just spread out more of your stitches to sort of catch up almost to how far apart your other gaps are. Sorry, nudged the camera. It's the other downside of a very long thread. You have to pull your hand a long way to pull the thread through. Cool, so we are getting really close. Feels like it's going to be a thread chicken. Was my very long thread long enough? I think it might not have been, annoyingly. We'll see. Yeah, no, if I want it to be nice and even, I'm going to have to do another thread, I think. Yeah, I would have finished it there. I'm like a couple of inches short. It's a bit annoying. You know what? I'm going to be cheeky. I'm going to undo those last couple. And I'm just going to space this one out a little bit more. This is, again, peak laziness and winging it. So if this is going to be my last round, I want to go roughly in the middle of those two to sort of close that gap as evenly as possible. Ooh. There we go. And again, roughly in the middle. And that brings us back to our starting point. Now again, here you're just going to do a couple of little stitches on the same spot. Just hold your initial length as snug as possible. I don't know how well this is going to be visible, but hold the main length snug whilst you do those securing stitches. And then again, I always try and go like through the middle of the stitches and come out at the bottom so that the tail is tucked away. Oh, come here, needle. Get hold of it. The nice thing about this is because all of these are connected, the tension is kind of flexible. So although this is quite like tight, there is a little bit of flexibility because it will sort of pull from the adjacent stitches on the bit that you're not pulling on. Now, you'll see in some places I've just sort of out of habit tucked them away. Sometimes your fabric will poke up between the threads. You can see this one's sort of bulging up a little bit. Literally all I do with that is either with my finger or with a chunky needle, just pop it almost underneath that layer of thread at the top. You can go around and sort of finesse it. At this point, I'd also snip away any of these little tails from knots, and again I'll probably just poke those underneath, snip away the tail from the ending. And those tails are usually quite easy to spot because they're the only things that aren't in nice tight little straight lines. Pop those in the bin and just tuck those remaining threads underneath so they're out of the way. And that's it. That is the spiral back. So you can flip it over, and obviously you can't see that spiral is there at all. The other nice thing about this is because the spiral is holding all of the fabric in place, what you can do, you can either just display this as is, and I normally use little clear command hooks, and I'll just hook them sort of in here, so that it's sort of holding underneath the fabric if possible. But you can now actually, if I can get the right grip, loosen this hoop off. So you can actually completely remove the outer hoop, and you can just have it hanging like a little, it's almost like a little round canvas. So yeah, you can again hang it on a command hook, but it's just a little round piece of stitching, and your outer hoop is just not necessary anymore, because the spiral holds its own tension. So that is the spiral back as a standalone thing. And that, yeah, it's a fun way to finish it. I find it nice and easy. It's quite therapeutic to do. So I'm going to pop the hoop back on this one, because as I said, this is going on my hoop wall. And for now, I've kept the hoops on all of them. I go through periods of debating, do I just take them all off? But I think I quite like the little hoop vibe. It's quite nice to be able to take the hoop off if you're gifting something though, and like maybe embroidery, I don't know, like the hoop is almost like an iconic embroidery thing, so I think as people who stitch, it's like I quite like them. I appreciate it's not everyone's taste though, so it can be quite nice to be able to give someone like a round stitched project that doesn't always have the hoop. So that is one project finished. What I have done is I have pre-laced the back of project 2, just so I'm not showing you the same thing twice. So it's done exactly the same way, with my 3 points around the outside and the same thread and everything, so it's easy to see. But what I'm going to do, the Autistic AF is going on my hoop wall, so that is now done and will go and get hung up after this video. For this one, we are going to finish it though like an ornament. So I've got two options. I get a lot of my ribbon from the floristry shop at the end of our road. It's like a wholesale florist place. They have the best ribbon. They're like proper fabric ribbon rather than like plastic based, and they're really cheap. You can see this was £2.25 for like, I don't know, a lot, 50-meter roll, so really good value. I think I can't decide which ribbon to use. I like how narrow the cream one is, but I think I want to pop a colour. All of my other ones are much bigger. We're going cream. I don't want it to be overpowered by a really chunky ribbon. So I'm going to snip myself a length of ribbon. And we're going to take the hoop off. Oh, I was tightening it, not loosening it. Not smart. Okay. Too loose. There we go. So we've got our little piece of stitching with our nice little spiral back. I'm going to get my chunky needle. Okay, so I've just done this once and realised the camera wasn't rolling. So you can see there's already quite a chunky hole there, but I have a nice big darning needle. You probably don't need one this excessively large, but it's the only one I can find right now. I'm going to thread my ribbon, and all I'm going to do is go through one layer and then come up in the middle of the hoop. So have that come through, and then I'm going to thread the other end and do the same but from the other side. So I'm going in at the back again through the hole that I already made, and back out through the middle. So the reason for doing this is you can tie a little knot in the two ends just to secure them. And that means that when you pull your ribbon loop at the top here, you just have like a nice loop. You don't have have a knot at the end. And you can obviously make this as long as or as short as you want. I quite like them long because Christmas tree branches are awkward to get over. But yeah, your knot is now tucked on the inside here. So the last step then, we're going to come back to a little felt hoop that we made at the start. So I did this by taking the inner hoop and just drawing around it on a piece of felt and cutting out so that it was the right size. I sometimes then will trim a little bit more so that it doesn't poke out around the outside edges. So let's just do that now. You literally only want to take like 1 millimeter or 2 off of each side. Felt is quite, I'm doing it off camera, aren't I? Felt is quite, like, it's got a little bit of stretch to it, so again, this doesn't need to be super precise. Can always trim a little bit more if needs be. So that now fits on the back and just leaves a little bit of the linen showing around the outside. So all I'm going to do now, I am going to swap back to cream because this is going to be very visible, but with some cream pearl cotton we are then just going to tack that onto the back. So I will try and show this as best I can, even though it's cream on cream on cream.
Hi, Editing Jess here. Just to say, apologies, basically. My camera focus was not great on this and I wasn't great at keeping it in shot, but please bear with and hopefully it will still be visible enough and useful to you.
To the underneath here. Again, this is going to be covered up, so it doesn't need to be super neat or precise. It just needs to be secure. Just 3 or 4 stitches in the same little spot, and then give it a good tuck to make sure it's not going anywhere. So that I can pull on it, it's not going anywhere. Then we lay our felt over the top, and how do I want to do this? I'm going to come up underneath where I've not done many like this, I will be honest. I've got, I think, 3 Christmas ornaments that I've finished this way. So this is a bit me winging it. The spiral back, as you've seen, I've done it a lot of times. So there's an element there of I've figured out what works for me. But I think this is going to work. So all I'm going to do is, I don't know enough about embroidery stitches to know the name. I want to call this a blanket stitch, but I don't think that's right. Is it whip stitching? I don't know. Tell me in the comments if you know. All I'm doing, make sure I'm on camera, is just snagging a bit of the linen and then coming up underneath into the felt. Oops. Always snagging on. And then just moving a few millimeters round and doing the same again. We're just going to go all the way around doing the same. Is that visible? Where's the camera? There we go. So you just get these little diagonal stitches. And I think the important thing here is consistency, so trying to go the same distance around for each stitch and the same distance in before you come up through the felt. It can take a little bit of wiggling, so the bit where I'm snagging the linen is basically on the small hoop, so I'm kind of having to wriggle it to get through the fabric because it's pressed right up against the hoop. I'm just going to go all the way around and do the same. I might speed this bit up because I suspect it might be a bit boring to watch, so I will be back in a second when it's done. I get to the ribbon, I'm just going to go on either side of it. I'm not going to faff with trying to go through it because the ribbon itself is already secured. All we're trying to do here is secure the felt. So you can also see here, because I've pulled this tight as I've gone, we've got, it's a little bit loose here. I'm gonna use my embroidery scissors and just trim a little bit more off of that section. And that will just get pulled tight over the gap. Note to self, for tutorials, make sure the camera is set up to be where my hands naturally want to rest when I'm working. Apologies that I keep drifting off out of shot. Almost there. We've pulled the tail through. Oh no, that's the tail of this. Come on. Okay. Come on. And then, just like to start, I'm just going to do several stitches in the same spot to secure. And especially because this is cream thread on cream felt and cream linen, I suspect that it won't be too visible. You can, if you prefer, do like a quilter's knot, and because this felt it's not really under tension, it's not going to like pop through in the same way. So I've just gone under and come up in the middle, and then just pull that tight and snip it off, and the tail will then sit on the inside. So that is it. That is, we've felt backed. Let me bring it up close. So we've just got this little sort of whip stitch around the outside edge. And as I said, when we got to the ribbon, I've just done one on either side. And there you have it, a little snowman ornament all finished and ready to hang on the tree. And the back is completely enclosed, so no one can see the back of your stitching, don't worry. And yeah, this works on pretty much any size hoop. It will just, obviously the bigger the hoop, the more thread it will take to do the spiral. But I think for doing this kind of hoopless hoop, as it were, the spiral is just, it's such a game changer for being able to take that outer hoop out and just have this be an ornament in its own right. So there you have it. We have our little ornament hoop, which is fully covered on the back. So perfect for hanging on the Christmas tree, or if you want to gift an ornament and not have it look like, basically not let people see your back of your stitching. It's a perfect option. And then of course we have our original spiral back hoop. And again, you can take the outer hoop off of this one. I'm choosing to leave it on to match the other hoops on my hoop wall. So that's everything for this tutorial. I hope you found that helpful. I hope you've learned something new. Please let me know in the comments or send me a message on Instagram if you use this tutorial to finish any of your hoops. I'd love to see your work. And if there's any other tutorials you might like me to do, please just let me know. So happy stitching, happy FFOing, good luck for FFO February, and I will see you all soon. Bye for now.